Hi, everybody. This is Ian Durius, and on behalf of Compassion International, thank you for being part of our June webinar. Our webinars are monthly online events that are designed to help you in your efforts to release children from poverty in Jesus' name. Tonight we'll focus on how your advocacy can look like after coming back from a Compassion group tour. Our guests tonight are my colleagues and friends, Karen Spencer, Amanda Prefer, and Rick Sloop. Karen, Amanda, and Rick have traveled extensively to Compassion's field countries on trips full of sponsors just like you, so they know and have seen how these trips can lead to the release of even more children from poverty in Jesus' name. In a moment, we'll start a conversation with them, but first, a few thoughts about getting the most out of this webinar. First of all, we love questions, so you're welcome to submit questions at any time by typing into the questions box in your GoToWebinar control panel. We'll try our best to answer your questions, but if we're not able to, the meeting platform we're using will document your questions so that we'll be able to email you a response. So again, we love questions, and you're free to ask your questions by sending them to us through the questions box. Also, you may be listening to a recording of this webinar, and you too can ask questions. Just email your question to advocate@compassion.com. Again, that's advocate@compassion.com. Well, all right. Well, Rick, Amanda, and Karen, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Thanks for in advance for what you're about to share. And Karen, I'd love to just kick it off to you if you would just kind of share a little bit about the why of this webinar. Like, why are we even doing this?
Sure, sure. Well, hello, everyone. It's great to be with you, both live, those of you who are on the call live, as well as those who are listening later. This is really exciting to me as a longtime sponsor myself, and like you said, Ian, having had the opportunity to go to the field to meet my own sponsored children and to see so many others do it as well, whether people are going on a Compassion sponsor tour or a short-term mission trip, or they're going to a Compassion country on their own and planning an individual visit to see their children or to visit their child's projects. It's an amazing opportunity that we have collectively and individually to expand or maybe hold a megaphone, if you will, to our voice for these children around the world. And certainly that's what it means to advocate for children, is to speak up for those who can't speak for themselves. The neat thing to me about any of these types of travel is that it naturally piques people's curiosity. They want to know why we're going. Why are we going to El Salvador? Why are we going to the Philippines? Why are we going to Uganda? Or where have you. So it's an amazing opportunity once that conversation door cracks open just a little bit to slowly walk into a continuum, a long-term conversation with those people. And there's so many different ways to do it. So hopefully that's what we'll be able to cover during this call, is some of that conversation.
Yes, well said. Well said. Can you share a little bit about some of the ways you've seen people advocate in that way?
Definitely. I'm working with some advocates and sponsors and their friends right now who are planning a trip to El Salvador, and we have some amazing ladies going on this trip who have been experimenting with a lot of different ways to start telling the story months in advance of actually going. So we have some ladies who have shared this trip as an invitation for others to join them. They're friends of theirs. They know that they've been a long-time sponsor with Compassion, and they know that caring for children and caring for the poor resonates with them, but perhaps it's always been their thing. And any type of trip with Compassion can be an opportunity to invite someone to come with you. So that's one way right off the bat, is inviting a friend, a family member, a church member, a coworker to join you on a sponsor tour, to join you on, maybe your church is joining Compassion for a short-term mission trip, or maybe your church or another group is doing some other type of mission trip travel, and you can include in the itinerary an opportunity to visit your Compassion children in that country. So that's one thing, is extending the invitation to others. we know as sponsors the amazing joy and the blessings we've had, what we've learned as sponsors ourselves. That maybe what started as a good thing initially to do something good for a child has divinely evolved to something much greater. And so inviting other people to join you is a significant way to start expanding that opportunity to advocate for children. Of course, not everyone's going to be able to join you physically. So there's a lot of other ways to be able to invite others to participate with you on a trip. Fundraising is a significant way, and that may seem surprising because you're asking people to help you actually go. But there are so many creative ways. I've seen sponsors over the years do very creative fundraising efforts, whether it's baking, jewelry creating, selling fresh pizzas, selling fresh bread, sewing different items, and every item that they've sold or made to sell, or even a garage sale, is an opportunity to tell what you're doing. It's an opportunity to tell where you're going and why, how important this relationship with your child is. And people get amazingly drawn in to that, and they are more than willing to buy a loaf of bread, or like my own daughter did, she created meals for missions and baked fun casseroles for sale and was able to, you know, help stock people's freezers, but people were more than willing to hear what a 14-year-old girl was doing so she could meet her child in the Philippines. And it gave her that platform to tell them why and what our family has been doing all these years. So that type of fundraising, not only before do you get to pique people's curiosity and start telling them long before you actually go, but it gives you permission to talk to them after you get back. So we'll get to that in a little bit. But the third part, so again, inviting people to join you, which will be, you know, a small percentage of people, inviting people to participate by helping you go through fundraising. And then the one everyone can do is being a prayer partner for you. Ian, I had shared with you an example that Lynn Watson, she's going on the El Salvador trip with us in the fall, and she shared with her husband that she wanted to create a prayer card to share with people in advance of our trip so that they could participate through prayer. And so her husband did this amazing job. Here he's photoshopped her two sponsored children into this photo with her. It looks like she's there. She actually has to tell
she's
people, no,
not?
I haven't actually met them yet.
That's great. I thought
So
that
isn't
was
it
her.
amazing? Yeah, no, it
Yeah.
looks like this was taken from a previous trip. So it actually gives her even more opportunity to explain, I haven't been yet. My husband created this for me, and then on the back side, she has some specific prayer points. So it draws an even larger audience into what she's doing and why, and it gives her a platform to start talking about why children at risk and in extreme poverty are important to her, why she's inviting others to join her in prayer, but that there's something we can do about it. And it's very simple. Sponsorship is one way we can take action for one child. And so inviting people to pray is significant. I know on previous trips that I've been on, I've shared prayer calendars, but you don't need a trip leader to share a prayer calendar. That's something you can create for whomever you want to pray for you, or like Lynn's done with this card. And just like the other things, inviting someone to join you on a trip, inviting someone to contribute financially toward your trip, or inviting someone to pray for you, all three of those give you that open door to share leading up to the trip, during the trip, if you have access to social media on the trip, you know, to do Facebook updates or blog updates, and then post-trip to tell about it. And from your experience, what you got to see, that eyewitness testimony, so you can start answering questions that hopefully inspire people to take action themselves and to sponsor a child and join you in that mission. If you'll notice on Lynn's card, the back side, she also points to a blog. So that's another way that she's raising awareness is through telling this story in her sponsorship story and advocating for children through her blog as well. So I wanted to turn it over to you, Rick, because you have some other amazing examples of how to draw people in on the front side as well as during the trip and post-trip.
Yeah, thanks, Karen. Boy, I love that prayer card.
Yeah.
That thing's wonderful. I am also leading a sponsor trip, advocate trip to Honduras, and it's actually coming up soon in July. And I tell you, I marvel at the creative ways that advocates share their experiences and their stories, and the way that they just share sponsorship and what's going on with them with the trip. So this particular picture that you're looking at right now, it might be kind of difficult to see all the details there, and especially the text. But this is something that Deborah Roberts, an advocate, has created. And basically what she would do is she would share a child that was available for sponsorship from one of the child development centers that we were going to be visiting on the Honduras trip. And I just loved how Deborah, in this case, really really pours into the dignity of the child and presents the child as they are. I mean, this particular girl's a princess, and for the boys, they are a prince. And she shares some of the detail about that particular child. And then this particular one, there was an update. This child has been sponsored. So in the backdrop there, if you can't see it, I can tell you there's a castle in the backdrop. And obviously, you could probably see the crown on her head. It's just a beautiful way to kind of present the child to her readers. Now, Deborah does a blog, and this came from her blog site. So she's been posting about the children who are available for sponsorship from the projects we're going to be visiting in Honduras. I want to point out a couple other things about her blog here. I was reading through some of it today, and she also had a section on calling it a special treasure hunt. Huh. And just real briefly, I just want to read because it's best for you to hear her words and not mine on this. She put, let's see, I currently have these 12 children remaining from the 24 that I have been personally advocating for, and would love to see each one of these precious ones sponsored by the time I arrive at their project on Friday, July 17th. So a lot of what Karen was sharing, Deborah is inviting people in to her trip and inviting them to be involved. And the next line kind of gives them an action step. I know that the Lord has a special sponsor plans for each one, and it's like going on a treasure hunt to find those sponsors. Both the sponsor and the child will be special treasures for each other. Is one of these treasures for you? Just a real beautiful way of sharing, advocating for the children. And then Deborah also in the same blog actually had a special note for grandparents. So she's really kind of seeking out to connect with her audience and on a broad way too. Try to connect with all different parts of the audience, whether they're younger people, millennials, baby boomers, and then grandparents. She puts, and just real briefly, several of these precious children live with one or both grandparents. What a blessing it would be for these grandparents as well as the child to have someone like you come alongside them to help and encourage them. Again, that personal connection that Deborah's sharing. Kim Hall is an advocate who's also has been blogging, and she's going to be on that Honduras trip. And in her blog, Three Little Larks is the name of it, God's Kingdom Here. She actually goes through and kind of highlights each of the projects we're going to be visiting. And so she invites people into the itinerary. And I understand a lot of times when you're on a compassion trip, maybe you don't even know what projects you're going to be visiting. until a week or two before the trip. In this particular case, these people had the projects lined up months in advance. We actually have one specific project that is brand new, just opened in March, 200 kids registered, and the advocates, the sponsors who are going on the trip to Honduras have been advocating for those 200 starting in pretty much the middle of April. And out of those 200, we're getting close to 100 of them already being sponsored.
Oh,
so
wow.
It's going to be quite a celebration when we actually visit Honduras 416 and get to meet the staff and the kids there. And the beauty of this too is they're going to continue advocating after the trip and probably be just have lots of pictures to share from that project, which will be a wonderful thing. But anyway, Kim in her blog, she shares about we're going to be visiting a project called Blessings of God, Child Development Center. There are close to 20 sponsors who are going to meet, about 40 children sponsored at this center. Then she talks about our last stop will be Honduras 374. She talks about just visiting some of the other child development centers as well, including 416. And she gives a little bit of information. So she's inviting her readers into the trip itself and inviting them to come along as a sponsor, maybe sponsor one of the children that we're going to be at one of the projects we're going to be visiting. She also is inviting them to pray, pray for the children, the project staff, and also all of us going on the trip as well. Something that I would like to point out at this point as well is that while you might not know, if you're going on a trip, the projects that you're going to be visiting well in advance, there is that option to also advocate for the country. Or in many cases, the person who at Compassion who is organizing the trip will know the city or cities that the trip's going to center around. So maybe you want to look at advocating for kids from those particular cities. So maybe there's 10, 20, 30 child development centers in a particular city, and maybe you could request child packets from a group of projects. That's just another option. And also an idea that happens often when people when they go on trips is to carry something for somebody who sponsors. So for instance, you're looking at this screen of the Princess Luden Arili, and perhaps the person that sponsored here, I would not be at all surprised if Deborah's not taking a gift on behalf of that sponsor, so she can give that to the Compassion staff in Honduras, and then they can get it to her. Or it could be that we're going to be at the project and Deborah's going to leave it there, or give it directly to the girl. So there's just so many different ways to be involved, and I know Karen hit on so many of them, but I did want to at least share a couple real-life examples of what a couple advocates are doing through blogging and through communicating their trip that's coming up via the blogs that they write on a really regular basis.
Yeah, that's great. These are all great ideas. So what Karen said, inviting, fundraising, and praying, I really like how memorable that is, and how really using every opportunity to kind of get people in your corner, whether they could physically come with you. I mean, it's a rare and wonderful opportunity to travel like this with a friend, and so if that is a possibility, to pursue that as hard as you can. And then fundraising is not just the dollars raised, but the conversation that come about during that fundraising, and then of course prayer. And I enjoy the example that Karen shared of the prayer cards, something real tangible for people to again be in your corner. And then Rick, when you were talking about kind of the digital aspect of it, the blogging and maybe updating Facebook status, just because it's relatively easy to get online to keep people updated during the trip. I particularly love that. I remember when we were in Nairobi, Kenya, I was in my room just settling in for the night, and I stepped outside of my room into the hallway, and there were all these travelers just sitting in the hallway because that's where the Wi-Fi connection was strongest, and they were writing their blog posts, they were posting on Facebook. It's just really fun to be able to keep people connected. And Karen's right, people are curious, people want to be involved, and so this is a chance to do that. And I think the only thing I'd add would be, knowing these kind of things to really some of these examples of how people can get the most out of their trip and utilize their trip to increase their advocacy would be to kind of just keep your eyes open for any unique opportunities, like what Rick said about maybe bringing a child, bringing a gift to a child that was just sponsored. I mean, if your eyes aren't open to that, you won't see it. So anytime you have an opportunity to be able to just go for it and follow that hard. Okay, so this is great. This is great. So before we move on, just a quick reminder to you sponsors on the line, if we love questions, so feel free to ask us questions by typing them into the question box, and we'll have a chance to have some Q&A toward the end of the hour here. But Karen said this best. We don't want this webinar to be something where it's like there's one way to advocate post-trip. Obviously, there are several ways to do that. But sometimes some of you may come back from your trip with an opportunity to present at a church or a small group or work or whatever it might be. And so Amanda's going to talk a little bit about a tool that could be helpful to you if that's the case. So I'll let you take over here, Amanda, and I'll put up our visuals here in a moment.
Great, thank you. Yeah, visiting your sponsored child is inherently a very personal experience. And from the beginning, there's something about the relationship of you with that child or your family with that child that makes you take that leap to visit them across the world. So from the beginning, we see it's a connection of relationship. And what we love to see is sponsors from the beginning think about ways that it is about sharing your personal experience and the ripple effect of that. Who else? What other children can be impacted? Who else do I know that can be impacted? And we've given lots of great examples of how to begin to do that prior to the trip. And a few years ago, we had a wonderful group of sponsors. One in particular, Mitzi Vanderhurst, approach us as staff and provide some phenomenal research as sponsors who decided on their sponsored trips they would begin making connections and advocating and encouraging other people on the trip and during the trip to think about how are you going to share your story? What resources do you need to share this story? This is inherently something very personal, but how can this experience impact more children? And we can find more children if we link arms in sharing our story. And so as many great ideas within Compassion come from our sponsor base, we listened and we began to think about how we can engage sponsors with tools that from the beginning help them formulate really cohesive thoughts and ideas about presenting their experience to others. It's a very emotional experience. It's very exciting. There's a lot of challenges with travel, and how do you capture that? A lot of people struggle with how do I put this experience into words. So we began to look at the research Mitzi provided and thought, along with the other things that we've learned about visiting the field, what tools can we provide in reaching beyond just what my experience has been with this trip? And knowing that that personal experience really is the catalyst. And so I'm very excited to say within the next 6 months plus, we're not entirely sure when it's going to be revealed and released, there are going to be some new online tools where comprehensively from joining and signing up for a field visit all the way to sharing your personal experience and advocating for other children. It's going to be one continuum of engagement for those who visit the field, so that we are encouraging all our thousands of sponsors a year who visit the field to begin to think in terms of advocating by sharing their own personal story. So there will be more that will come and be rolled out within Compassion.com and Compassion at Large to all people visiting the field. But for those who are tuning in now and who will listen to the recording, you're going to get a sneak peek of one of our new tools that's going to be housed on this online platform. And I encourage you, as I talk about this tool, it is primarily right now in the format of a PowerPoint presentation. But really what we're aiming to do is, one, you can have a really great PowerPoint presentation to share for formal presentations. But also I encourage us to think of this in bigger, more creative ways. This is almost like a guide to help you share that experience, whether you use PowerPoint or not, or whether you just use your own photo album and from the trip, and you decide, hey, I want to kind of segment my photo album to follow along some of these PowerPoint or talking point ideas, and it's going to help me really keep on track as a guide of how the story unfolds. And so I encourage you to think of this not just in the formal sense of a PowerPoint presentation, which will also be made available to you, but in a sense, this is a starting place. This is for those especially who are shyer about getting in front of people. Some people come home from the trip, and it's also because of the emotional impact it's had. It's where do I start? You know, we wanted to really put solid how-tos in your hands, so it takes the guesswork out, and you can just plug and play some of your own phenomenal ideas and resources, and you can just view this simply as a launching pad. It's a place to start, and you can be as creative as possible with how you want to utilize this. In some ways, I wouldn't doubt some of you find ways to use it before, during, and after. So it's there as a tool for you to take apart and utilize. What you're looking at now on your screen is actually a sample PowerPoint, a completed sample PowerPoint that is there to help you. And you'll see, for instance, the second screen, who is compassion? And it's going to take you through a guide of how to start the conversation. As you can see, and I'm fine, Ian, if you just want to do a slow roll through these.
Sure.
A lot of language has been provided for you. Ideas of where do we start? Hey, I've been sponsoring with Compassion for this long. Then we get to the trip. We're meeting new friends. We're meeting them at the airport. We're inserting pictures of us at the airport. And then we're also going to the Child Development Center. And then obviously we know good rules of thumb. We don't want the PowerPoint or the presentation to say everything. Save the good stuff for them listening and looking at you. So you're telling your stories as you go through this. Children at the centers, what that experience was like visiting the centers. This is, once again, sample photos. You would obviously insert your own photos. We all know visiting the Child Center, lots of games, lots of fun visuals there. Also, educating your audience on things like the Child Survival Program. So you're moving into what else? So it wasn't just about visiting my child, and you're integrating visuals that you took of your visit. And also we provided some more language here in terms of what the Child Survival Program is like. Experience a new culture. You know, people always want to know, what did you eat? What did they wear? You know, what kind of really jolted you in that experience? Things that stood out to you, things that maybe shocked you about your trip. Tell those stories. even telling the story of something like what you ate at the center, it unpacks for them what happens at that child center, the place of joy, the place of provision for those kids. Um, and of course, any personal stories. We all know when we visit the field, something is going to stand out about that. And you're once again expanding your audience even beyond the sponsored child visit day. You're telling that, which is what this slide is, you're telling about meeting your sponsored child within the context of a bigger story that's really intended to motivate and inspire others to sponsor as well. And obviously, everyone wants to know what that was like to meet your sponsored child. And then we move into you can change a life with me. Really, it's the challenge. It's the this is the time that you present the need. You present. We've got some great statistics that you share with people. It doesn't stop with me and my sponsorship. And obviously, everyone wants to know what does sponsorship provide. So we even provided for you some great little icons and easy ways to say, how do I unpack holistic development? Where do I begin to unpack those terms for people? And we've just made it very easy for you. And then obviously, when you sponsor that child, what are some of the benefits? What are some of the relational, the prayer needs? What can you expect from that? And then finally, this last slide is really that invitation to say, come talk to me. I've got packets with me. We obviously encourage you, whether it's a one-on-one or a formal presentation, to have child packets with you in the weeks following your trip. And you can order those child packets through us very easily and keep track of that impact. Because you really almost, from the moment you land, you're going to be telling your story at the airport and beyond. And so you want to be sure to have some child packets on hand. And we've heard a lot of great things about prior to preparing, but post-trip as well. We encourage every sponsor to go ahead and order those child packets prior to leaving so that they're at your doorstep ready to go for any even one-on-one presentations that become available. Ian, if we could now pull up the talking points document.
Absolutely, we'll do. And real quick, Amanda, if I may interrupt,
Sure.
a couple of things. Well, for one, keep those questions coming, audience. Thank you so much. And secondly, I really enjoy the visuals, and I like the icons that we looked at right here, but I also like this PowerPoint presentation as, I mean, it's just a real great, like from a communication standpoint, for people who may be nervous or maybe inexperienced to be speaking up front. You have your outline flashing before your eyes by clicking through each of these slides. So I think, what you'll talk about in a little bit will really kind of help us bring more substance to some of these headlines for each slide. And I think it's just a really brilliant way to help people get up there and do the scary thing of talking in front of people, but of course we're doing it for the kids. So yeah, so very well said.
Great. Yeah, especially when it's something so emotional, so heartfelt as a visit to the field. It's a lot to put into words.
Yeah.
Yeah, this next document, talking point document, this is where you could take this document and run with it in a variety of ways, really picking it apart with whatever the format is and the audience is. In essence, we're just, like it says, we're excited to help you share that field visit experience. And from what we've seen in the past, people like the guidance with that because it is such a big deal and such a life-changing event. So we can scroll down to the next page, Ian, and we'll see basically, before you get started, obviously what I mentioned earlier, ordering sponsored child packets and having those handy from the country you visited. Obviously, you can always request. It's never guaranteed, but you can always request from the specific projects or vicinity. We always do our best to accommodate those needs when we can, obviously it just depends upon which children are available. But we have the 800 number, advocate@compassion.com. You can reach us at several ways sponsors can really prepare for that presentation. And what we'd like to do is get this type of talking point document in your hands, be thinking about it even before you leave. And then really, we'll just go through this really quickly because it's fairly intuitive. This talking point document coordinates with the PowerPoint presentation sample we just saw, but it really can be used in a host of ways. And once again, I just encourage you to see this as a guide. So meeting new friends, and what we've done under each section that's mentioned on the PowerPoint, we've given you questions to draw out what that conversation could look like. Was, meeting new friends? What was it like traveling with strangers? I mean, sometimes the adventure begins right away with the flights and the luggage, and also things like, under children at the centers, how did the children react to you? What did you enjoy the most? These are questions meant to provoke memories from your trip that may have kind of gone by in a blur, because we know that happens, and really for you to draw notes. Oh, I remember that. Oh, okay, yeah, this was significant at this moment to me, or this stood out to me the most of that day. So these questions are simply meant to be to stir that pot, to get those thoughts and those memories and those ideas flowing. As we scroll further down, you'll notice we have some great language to make it easy to plug and play. We realize unpacking compassion and sponsorship is a beautiful, wonderful experience, but there's a lot there. And so focusing in on what compassion is as being Christ-centered and church-based and child-focused, really your story tells that. Your story is witnessing to them already in a sense of what we're all about. As you visit those churches, as you are focused upon that child and holistic development. And also we have given some ideas for babies and moms for the Child Survival Program. What does that mean when you say Child Survival Program? That's going to pique the interest of folks that you're talking to with medical checkups and prenatal care. And then also for those who are blessed to visit future leaders, developing leaders, a leadership development program, students. We've also put some nuggets about what those programs involve, and secondary education and opportunities like that. One of the other areas, as you can see on your screen, compassion staff and helpers. I mean, it's phenomenal how impressed we all are and consistently are with the compassion staff that we encounter and the volunteers that we encounter. So talking about those people and celebrating those people who are the hands and the feet on the field is really special. And then obviously experiencing a new culture. And there's also at the bottom there you'll see more statistics, just some things that stir your audience to understand the bigger picture. Once again, broadening it from that personal experience into the power of linking arms and what we can do together to make a difference in childhood poverty. And then obviously, once again, these talking points are coordinating with the PowerPoint, a story that touched my heart, and meeting my sponsored child on that day. What was that like? What stood out to you? Things like that. And then closing with the invitation. We encourage you, no matter how you slice this pie or how you utilize it, this is about inviting other people into that journey with you and understanding that we are the church, and as a part of the church, this is a part of our DNA as believers, and what we can do and the impact we can make as sponsors. And I think that's about it towards the bottom. Let's see, Ian, what else we've got here. We've got the icons to help us unpack sponsorship.
Yeah, it looks like it's a close.
Yeah, some closing comments. You know, come and talk to me. A lot of people are nervous about how do I ask other people to sponsor. Once again, here's a guide, and here's language that you can use that works for you. Tweak to what works for you. And then, Ian, the last thing I want to do is show the PowerPoint presentation that's the template.
Okay.
So this, in just a moment, you'll see on the screen, this is the blank PowerPoint. The first one I showed you was sort of the pretty sample all dolled up. But this next PowerPoint template is what you could utilize and where you would insert your own photos and your own language, your own country-specific ideas. And Ian, if you just want to do a kind of a slow it doesn't have to be that slow because they know now what they're looking for.
Sure.
You can duplicate slides, you can change the wording. Some of it is formatted for you that's consistent. Really, this is about you tailoring the presentation. You can take things out, you can add things in. Once again, we have made it super easy for you to insert your ideas and thoughts, and especially your photos, right? That's a beautiful part of this presentation, people visually seeing what you experienced. So these tools are now made available to you, and more to come. This is really scratching the surface of the type of tools and resources. The thing I'll close with is to recognize we can provide sponsors who visited the field with a variety of brochures, a variety of videos, a variety of guides, and you know, pamphlets and compassion fact sheets. I mean, whatever you need for your presentation, even down to the compassion blue tablecloth that you want to put your child packets on for your presentation, we can provide that for you, and we are happy to do so. And we're happy to get to know you and get to know your heart for helping children in poverty and to walk alongside you in the advocacy journey. So for those who are listening live and to the recording, the Advocate Engagement team, you can ask for us just by calling the 800 number or as you look at these talking point documents, that talking point document has our contact information, and you can be directed to relationship managers who will be there for you to help you in this process of sharing your story. And there's just a phenomenal array of free resources, posters, banners. I mean, we really can help based upon your audience and this audience size and what you're wanting to accomplish, meet those needs for you. So thanks so much for your time. I really appreciate it. And
Yeah.
I look forward to serving those in the future who feel inspired by this.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I really love having this template because I don't like working in PowerPoint. I'm not good at it. And so to have something that I can just fill in, look, it's really great. And I think, I mean, for those of you who are on in the webinar that have visited, you just know how fast these 5, 7, 10 days go by. Sometimes they go really slow, but sometimes they go by really fast. And so when we have this tool that's essentially giving us a moment to ask ourselves questions, whether it's on the bus going to the student center or at night right before you go to bed, to think along the lines of, you know, those people that we meet. How was it worshiping in this different kind of church with believers, but who are singing songs in a different language, and the sponsor visit day and all that good stuff, and to be able to have that written down so that to a point where you can just kind of pour it into this template. It's just a really, really exciting tool. So thank you, Amanda. So let's take some questions. Looks like we have about 15 minutes, so we'll kind of talk through some questions. And Rick, I'd like to start with you if I could, because you alluded to some of this earlier when you were sharing. But in some cases, in the rare case, someone who's going on a trip can know some real specific information about the student centers they're visiting, even the cities that they're going to. And so that really proved advantageous for someone who wants to kind of prepare to advocate uh, pre, mid, and post trip. But if you don't have that kind of information, what would you say? What would be a good kind of tactic to be able to be specific, even though you don't have any specifics nailed down quite yet?
Mm-hmm. That's a good question. I would say, first of all, just sharing the opportunity that you have, that you're going to be going to a particular country. So you can actually, if you are interested in advocating for specific children from a specific country, you could certainly do that in a broader way, and not maybe so single project focused, because you don't know which centers you're going to be actually visiting yet. You also have some other things to do in terms of advocating, I guess, pre-trip without all the information. Would be maybe requesting child packets from a specific cluster area, maybe a specific city, maybe something that really resonates with your heart or is on your heart about that particular country. You can certainly share maybe about your particular child that you sponsor, maybe his or her project, the community where he or she lives. It's a great opportunity to share your experience that you've already had with your child, even before meeting that person. And it could be sharing something that was in a letter that they wrote, something personal that's really part of your sponsorship story. So, it could be as singular focused as sharing about what's going on in you as you prepare for this trip, visiting your individual child that you sponsor, sharing some of that story maybe via letters or in any other way that you've developed your relationship with your child, whether it's through a pastor writing a letter, sharing about what's going on at the project, those type of things. And certainly you can kind of broaden it out and advocate for the country, for a specific region of the country. And like I said earlier, there is often the trip planner, one of the first things that person does is submit the particular areas that they would like to visit on a trip. So there would be that knowledge of, we're going to go into this part of the country, or we're going to be targeting this city or these two cities. These are the places that we're going to be staying. Maybe not the specific hotels, but the specific cities. And that could be real helpful in terms of directing how you want to advocate, before the trip.
Yeah, that's great. That's really helpful, Rick. Thank you. Yeah, essentially, it would be really great to have specifics, but if you don't, that doesn't mean you can't be specific. Even just advocating for the country or the cluster area. So, great. That's helpful. Another question coming is, where can we get this resource? I'll go ahead and tackle that one. If you're hearing my voice, if you're looking at the screen, you will have access to this within the next 24 hours. The PowerPoint template, I'm going to put on a hosting site because it's rather large. So if any of you want it, you can just download it from that hosting site into your computer, whether you want the sample or the template. Ideally, the template would be best because you can change that up, but that way you can see what a sample looks like. So that'll be available to you. And then, Amanda, for other, how does this, I guess, where in trip planning would this resource pop up for, a sponsor getting ready to go on a trip? Would this be, where would this show up in part of their preparation? I guess access to this, that would be.
Yeah. Well, Future State, we're not quite there yet, but
Okay.
Future State, it's going to be housed on the new online platform at compassion.com.
Great.
Where basically the same kind of spots you would sign up for the trip, you would also see a tab to share your trip experience, and that's where these kinds of tools will be housed. In the interim, we're sort of housing them with advocate engagement team. Folks are more than welcome to email us or contact the advocate engagement team at any time to say, hey, I heard this was available, until we can more formally make it available on compassion.com, which we're hoping within the next 6 months or so. But in the interim, we're free to disperse these. So whether you're on the call or you tell a friend about it who's going on a trip, they're welcome to the resource as well. They just simply need to raise their hand to get in touch with us at advocate@compassion.com and say, hey, I want that template, I want those talking points, and we're more than glad to help them out.
Yeah, great, excellent. And we have another question coming in. That's not a question; it's a comment, but I think it leads to a really good question. Our advocate Yvonne Reynolds was talking about sharing photos after your trip. Chatbooks is an app that she recommended where you can upload photos and share that into a book, I should say. So Chatbooks is what she's mentioning, but also there are a lot of other kind of applications that might be helpful for trips, for those who go on trip. I know sometimes, I don't know about you, but sometimes I don't want to take pictures because I want to be in the moment. But rest assured, someone's taking a picture. So to be able to share some of those photos afterwards with a view toward maybe dropping it into that prayer card or a thank you note for people who did pray for you, into a template like this. Also, there's another application that I've not even begin to kind of unpack, but it's called Periscope. It's an application where you can broadcast live from where you are via the internet. And so if for any of you on the call who are early adopters, Periscope app might be a good one to be able to broadcast live from where you are using the internet. Karen and Rick, any other thoughts related to maybe some digital applications that people that you've seen sponsors tend to use post trip?
Yeah, I've actually seen several people create Shutterfly albums
Yeah.
after trips. I'm sure there's other platforms as well, but that's something to be able to take even when you volunteer at concerts or events, or to have on your coffee table, or to take to coffee with friends, family, whatever, have on your desk at work, and it's a colorful conversation piece that leads people to ask more questions and invite them to join you in sponsoring children as well.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
just expand their awareness. Action doesn't happen if people aren't aware.
Mm-hmm.
The cool thing about Shutterfly albums is that you can also share them digitally. So you can have a link on Facebook, for example, or you can send via email so people can see it through social media as well. So I'm sure there's other platforms similar to that. I know I think you can make Apple Books as well. So there's different ways. But again, there's just something so appealing that draws people in to see photos.
Mm-hmm.
And like you referenced, we don't want to live behind our camera when we're traveling. We want to be fully present when we're there with our sponsored kids, when we're there at a project and interacting with the men and women who work with the kids and the parents. And so that's where being able to share photos with other travelers is very important too. So whether that's on Facebook, if you have a Facebook group, or using some type of cloud like Dropbox, I've done that different times too, where we share photos. So that way you can still create your own photo books or your own PowerPoint presentations like we've seen, but maybe using someone else's photos,
Mm-hmm.
especially capturing photos of you with your child. You can't really take pictures of you hugging your child's neck. Someone else can. So looking for ways to share like that. But we've all heard the expression, a photo or a picture says 1,000 words, and
Mm-hmm.
it really does. So if there's a way to visually capture, whether it's for a presentation like we've discussed, or a photo book, or on social media, Twitter even, Instagram, things like that, that's a fabulous way to be able to keep drawing people in post-trip.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well said. Rick, do you have any thoughts, whether it be a digital application or maybe just a way to keep things in front of yourself or in front of others post-trip?
Yeah, as I was listening to Karen, what popped into my head was what one of my advocates came up with. As he knew he was going to be sharing with his church, and so he had video shot of I don't know if it was his sponsor child, but there there were a group of kids, and they greeted, and I think the kids were in Kenya maybe, and they greeted this particular church by name, which was a pretty cool personal thing, and it's something that obviously takes some proactiveness, because you have a presentation when you come back, and sometimes that does happen. Maybe your pastor at your church says, hey, we know you're going on this trip. We'd love to let you share your experience. We're going to give you 10 minutes the Sunday after you return.
Mm-hmm.
And for this particular advocate, it was a case of he knew he was going to be doing a Compassion Sunday. So because of that, he proactively made sure that he could get some video, and it was personal. It was some Compassion kids at a child development center speaking directly to this church that sponsors a lot of kids. And it was just a really cool, personal way to do things, and it's a little different, a little outside the norm. But that's just a different thing that came to mind. Kind of piggybacking on what Karen said about the Shutterfly book, one thing that I've been on a good number of trips, and because of that, the pictures just mount up, and you just get so many of them, and they're stored here and there, and on my computer, and on different disks and thumb drives, and I just decided to go ahead and start making some books, because I thought the books would be the easier way to share, and to invite people into that story, and so I made some Shutterfly books with my pictures, and I started to organize them, and I did that during over the course of a couple months during one winter, and it's just been a great thing to have those books here now all the time, and something that could be pulled out easily and to share with other people.
Yeah.
It's good stuff.
Yeah, that is good stuff. Well said. Well, we're coming up to the top of the hour, and I'll just like to close with a couple of other thoughts. I think that one thing that all these thoughts and ideas is conveying is, I guess, this idea of openness. I think sometimes it's hard to be totally open when you're traveling, you're sleep deprived, you're wondering what's going on in this country and all that kind of stuff. But I think between the questions that these talking points are asking of us, these ideas that Rick and Karen and Amanda shared, they're just ways to help us kind of stay open in the moment, and a way to capture what's going on, so that down the road you can sift through these stories and thoughts and images to be able to share them, whether it be 2 minutes getting caught up with a friend in the hall at church, or maybe from the stage at church, or in front of your coworkers, or what have you. But I really appreciate how all these tools are just really helping us kind of be in the moment and give us a chance to kind of record these thoughts. So this is great. This is great. And so we'll come to a close here. To those of you who are participating live or listening to a recording, we're grateful for the time you're investing in your ministry as sponsors and advocates. Thank you, Amanda and Karen and Rick, for all that you've shared with us. And I'm hopeful that our time together today will be helpful to all of us sponsors as we participate in releasing children from poverty in Jesus' name. Thanks, everyone. Have a great rest of the day.